This episode is brought to you by Pentester Academy TV, the leader online cybersecurity education. Cybersec Community Chat.
Hello to all viewers, welcome to another episode of Cybersec Community Chat. I am your host, Damien. Today we are pleased to have Leonard from GE Healthcare on board to this episode of Chat Sessions. Let's get our conversation started. Hello Leonard, it's a pleasure to have you on board to this episode of Cybersec Community Chat. To kick off these sessions, my always first question is about your self-introduction. How do you came about in this field of cybersecurity?
Morning, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to share a bit about myself. So I started my career about 21 years ago, and I had a background of engineering, but I always liked to tinker with stuff. So I played with Linux, I played with networking during my university days. And it happened so that my first job was as a network security specialist with Nokia. So it's sort of like you have a hobby, and then opportunity give you a way to start a career in this space, and that's how I get started. So yeah, I think I was lucky that I get to do what I like, and I've been staying in this career for the past 21 years.
Yeah, 21 years is a pretty long years that you have been. Do you still have that passion in going on, for the next 10 years?
Yeah, I think this will go for a very long time, right? I mean, if you look at the Industrial Revolution 4.0, it is really amazing. I mean, all the things that we see, be it innovations, technology, and advancement, right? Everything changes. The business model, they are changing in a way that we have not seen before. If you, probably you or any of the audience remember, I used to play with a modem, right? And then I still remember that back then we do not have internet. So then you have this, what we call BBS, the bulletin board system. This is a way for us to dial up to a private server, and you can interact with all the visitors on the private server. And our speed was like, the very first one was 4,800 bots per second. So that means just like 600 bytes per second. I think where we are now is 1 gig per second, right? And I think in terms of business model, in terms of the impact that the technology can do, enabling new business model, this all happens very, very fast. And I don't think this is going to be a boring space to be. And in fact, if we don't catch up and we keep on running, we'll be left behind. So yeah, definitely, as long as there is energy left in me, I'll be happy to walk along and run along sometimes, because certain period of time you have to run. Even walking is not good enough.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, your point that other guests also say that cybersecurity is a continuous learning process, and you guys have to keep, upgrading and change and learn. As you mentioned, there's a lot of transformation going through as well. We have a lot of new folks coming to cybersecurity, and I do hear a lot of people's perception about cybersecurity is about hacking, red, blue team. Is there other cybersecurity domain that people overlook or don't even look at it or chuck it one side?
Yeah, a very good question. In fact, the domain of cybersecurity, or to be put on a broader term, it could be information security or even IT security, right? It actually covers more just than blue or red. And now, for example, we have a purple teaming that combines red and blue. But above all, cybersecurity is like a very wide domain. If you think about the 5 domains in the NIST cybersecurity framework, you have identify, protect, detect, recover, and response. One could be specializing in 1 or 2 or even more of the domains, but you don't have to be good at everything. And in fact, I think doing one domain and specializing in that, it is much better than having a good knowledge of everything, but not being able to specialize in one. So likewise, right? So if you enjoy all this pen testing, capture the flag, and so on, red teaming may be good for you. But not everybody like that kind of pressures. Not everybody like to capture something. Some people just like to defend. And when you say defend, you identify and you manage the risk, you deploy controls, you keep on monitoring, and that's good by itself too. And some people like both, and this is where we have purple teaming. So I suppose there's no right or wrong, right? Understand what do you like and specialize in that. I think that's really what we should go to. And yeah, once again, it's not unlike like the movies, right? The movies always put more on the red teaming side. But think about it, if everybody is a red teaming, right, then who become a blue teaming? Who's going to put the controls in place? Who's going to start defending stuff, right?
Yeah, it's true, we still have, as you mentioned, there's other domain, not about red team and blue team, and people should really explore to focus on their expertise and their passion that you mentioned that they are in, so that they can grow even deeper in the topics of what they are. As people is entering to the market, there's a lot of job opportunity always listed number of years. What is your view of fair opportunity for newcomers to come into the industry? Where people always say that you need to have 5 years, 7 years, but people always come in with only 0 or 1 year's experience. How can we provide them the fair opportunity?
That's really another great question, right? To me, cybersecurity field of profession is really unique. It is one that has a very low barrier. So technically speaking, right, someone who may just have a basic educational achievement, let's say it could be high school, right? Or they don't even go to high school. It doesn't mean that you can't go and be in this field. You can do self-learning and you could be a successful cybersecurity person, because there's no such thing as that. It's unlike other regulated profession where you need to have a degree, you need to be licensed in order to work in that area. For example, like doctors, lawyers, and so on. But at this point of time, anybody with the right skill, there could be a bug bounty hunter, right? And I've seen a lot of stories whereby there's a kid out of nowhere in a underdeveloped countries, he or she has become a successful bug bounty hunter, right? Earning hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. And thus, this person has to go to universities? Probably no, right? So I think it really depends on the job itself. Certain job requires certain educational background, especially those with the leadership skill or management position. Yeah, there is a certain experience that we need, a certain maturity that's required. But when it comes to a technical role, this is where I believe the barrier to entry is lower, as long as you have experience and you can learn yourself, and you could do as good a job as anyone else. Because if you think about it, there are a lot of virtual labs that you can practice your exploit, your attack, right? Like hacking the box and similar other services. You could go for the free services and start tinkering with the boxes. And if you know how to scan for vulnerabilities and you know how to exploit that vulnerabilities, right? And you know how to defend it, then you can be a Pentester. You could be a defender. So, and this doesn't require you to be in the school. But whereas if you're looking for, let's say, someone that manages a team with a budgeting responsibility, with a people leadership, this is where I think experience definitely come into play, and some kind of education, be it in the school or outside of school, would be beneficial for that person to be successful.
Okay. I think that's a good reply on that. As we know that people entering into the industry, certification kind of become a boom in this industry now, and everybody is like cert hunting. What if a candidate lacks certification but have strong portfolios in GitHub and industry contributions? will you consider him or her to be hired?
The short answer, yes. But let me share my thoughts on this, right? So certification is not everything, but it does show a couple of attributes of a person. One, the person shows that he has the motivation to learn and has motivation to show an effort and be tested accordingly towards the standardized test, right? So I think that's really a good value. And secondly, it's also about whether the person be able to know everything within the body of knowledge. Because sometimes a person may be good in one or two domains, but maybe lacking even the basic knowledge on other domains. So having that person pass a standardized test in certification, it ensures that they have a strong point areas, but they also have adequate knowledge on other areas. And thirdly, I think certification is also depends, right? Because there are good certification, there are certification that is probably less so, right? It depends on how stringent is the certification being developed, being maintained, and it also requires a person to maintain their knowledge by participating in conferences, participating in trainings, and so on. So it really helps us to be disciplined, because if we are going to work in cybersecurity industries, I can guarantee you have to keep on learning. And how do you prove that you keep on learning? Of course, you can keep on creating projects on GitHub. That's one way, which I find more practical way. But you also can show that you are participating in conferences, you are participating in training, you are achieving new certification. So there's a different way of doing it, because not everybody is a code developer. So not everybody has a GitHub page, right? So that's probably one good response about it. So I think certification definitely shows positive area about a person, but it is not, and it should not be a prerequisite, an absolute requirement.
I think that's a good point on certification. We have been always talking about certification, and people always saying that people chasing for certifications didn't really put their work into use and stuff like that. I think you give a different perspective on how certifications and also skills acquired at the same time. We talk so much about technical skills. You mentioned yourself. Besides technical skills, is there other qualities or soft skills you look into for a candidate?
Once again, it also depends on what is the role about, because there are certain technical roles where you would probably need 70 to 80% technical skill over the soft skill. But there are positions or roles whereby you need either balance or slightly more dominant soft skill than hard skill. So I can give you a couple of good examples. So let's say in the threat hunting area, right? So those professionals that their full-time job is to look at the systems that we have and try to hunt vulnerabilities, right? And that kind of role, certainly we need someone who is very good in their technical skill, because they seldom interact with the business stakeholder or other stakeholder beyond their own team. So I think that the soft skill is still important, but not as much. But if you consider someone that is, let's say, working in a risk management and working closely with the business unit, understanding what are the business priorities, what are the projects that they are running, and how do we insert our security processes, our security requirement into the project. There is a different result when you say that you must do this. And we say tactfully that we should include this steps, this budget, this timeline, because it helps you to decrease your risk. So I think that the approach, being tactful, being able to communicate well and clearly, definitely is also a skill that is important. So it depends on the roles once again, but ultimately, people in the so-called in the entry level or with a few years of experience, ultimately they will grow in their career, and either they become a team leader, they become manager, or they can be an expert in the specialist area. And they will need some kind of soft skill to communicate with their stakeholders and beyond that. Even, let's say, in an incident responder, for example, could be interacting with the highest level of management if they're being asked something. And the way we interact with the non-technical person is very important as well. So I would say, in terms of job requirement, it really depends on the job, but definitely soft skill and hard skill, both are important, and they have to be developed to balance a person's skill set and as well maturity.
Okay, one of the things is being technical, growing. I think you also mentioned about how they grow their soft skills in certain area. I do have people always ask me, by going on the cybersecurity career path, can they get into the management role?
Yes, certainly they can. But I would like to share my personal opinion that not everyone has to go to management role. It depends on what do they like. I've seen in my career my colleagues who naturally move on from a very technical role, being an individual contributor, to become a team leader, managing a team, to even become a senior management, right? And that's what people typically like to have, but not always the case, because you could be still an individual contributor, meaning that you are not managing anybody, but you are an expert in your area. And from that point, you are no less senior or no less junior than other people who are managing a team. So typically we call this, there's a management track, there's a technical expert track. In terms of salaries, in terms of job grade, they could be the same, right? So think about in that networking area, someone could be a senior architect, could manage and design a complex architecture. But this person is a one person. He's not a manager of many people. And he would have the same salary or even more in some cases compared to someone who's managing a team. So I would say it depends on individual preferences. If you like working for yourself and you don't like managing people because there are some dynamic area into that, there's nothing wrong with it. Continue to be on your part and become an expert in your area, and you can be promoted on that area. But if you do want to have different challenges in managing people and give it a try, or encourage you to give it a try, manage a small team, understand the complexity on dealing with people, dealing with setting priorities, mentoring, coaching. If it's not for you, that's not a cup of your tea, you can always go back to being an individual contributor. But if you enjoy it, then go ahead and join the management rank.
Leonard, I do know that you manage a team. So were you able to share about your experience in managing a team? What's the pain point in managing a team, or what is the delightful point? What's the pros and the cons in managing a team?
Thanks for that question. I think to me, people is my number one priority, because the work is always tough, and no matter how tough is your work or the assignment that was given to you, you could do it well if you have a really strong team that's united behind you and share the same larger picture, common objective, and give it what they can to achieve that. So that's what I will call a high-performing team, right? But to build a high-performing team is not easy. Why? Because everyone has their attribute, everyone has their preferences, dislike, and so on. So being a people leader, we need to understand everyone's preferences. Some person, I can show you a couple of examples, right? So let's say within the team of 15 people, there's always some people that doesn't like the other team member. And when I ask them, why do you don't really like to work with this person? I don't know, I just don't like it. So that there's some personal bias there, right? And probably because of how they look or how they speak or whatever, right? I mean, I try not to dwell too deep on that, but the conclusion is that some people in your team member doesn't like the other team member for no obvious reason. And then you need to be able to coach them so that they can work together professionally, right? There are teams that like to go faster. There are some team that members that like to work slower, right? So then you also have to calibrate the pace of the team. Then there's also a silos. So if you have a large team, the most difficult thing is silos, because people will think, okay, this is my one small sub team, and that's another sub team. We all work in the same division, the same manager, but we are doing a different thing, right? Because of that, I don't really want to know what other team is doing, and that's actually bad for the for the overall team, right? Because you need to share information, you need to identify synergy, and as I say, 1 + 1, it doesn't have to be 2. And there's this one person that I respected, and he actually gave me this word that I always remember until today. TEAM, TEAM, stand for together, everyone achieve more. So that's his slogan, and I remember it to the day, because it's really true. I mean, if everyone just do their job and they do their job well, yes, the job gets done, but you only achieve 100% productivity. So my challenges or my mission as a people leader, right? How do I get everyone to do 200%? But not by overworking them, not by pressurizing them, but by getting people to share information about their work, being able to synergize their work, and being able to propose new ideas and act on those new ideas. So there are a lot of examples that I can share with you, but obviously we have a limited time here. But that's really the principle that I have, right? I mean, how do we really make it fun for the team to work together, achieve more, without overworking them, without stressing them, and really valuing them as an extension of your family member?
I think it's quite a good little insights of about the managing of people, managing a team, and people who wants to move into it could kind of get a little bit of experience of an example that you have shared earlier on of what are they going to expect. And I think it's kind of interesting to hear from your perspective and how you manage a team. What kind of leader are you as well? This also make me understand you even better as well. You also mentioned saying that cybersecurity work is tough, and I have been talking to a lot of cybersecurity practitioners and stuff. Cybersecurity work is tough. Everyone's known. What is your advice for people to avoid burnout?
Very good question again. I think you must have think that all these questions very carefully, right? Because all these are very practical questions and very good questions. So I think, again, I will share my personal experience. So I typically a type of leader that will ask my team member to leave before 5 p.m. And why do I do that? And because I believe in people achievement by outcome. So we measure the success or productivity of an individual from what they achieve, not by how much time do they spend in the office or in the computer. And this has to do with my early career, because I was working for Nokia, and I was part of those early batch that piloted mobile working. So I don't have to go to the office. I can work at home using my modems at that point of time, use the VPN, I can work in Starbucks, and so on. So I personally believe that you can be wherever you want to be as long as you do your work and you're committed to the outcome that you agreed with your manager. Even better if you can exceed those objectives. And it doesn't matter really. I mean, you can be in the Sentosa, right, and enjoying the sun and so on. But if you do your job well, what else, right? I mean, I don't really, but of course, having said that, doesn't mean 100% people can work remotely, right? Because the team needs to see each other. And in fact, I make it a mission that every month we will meet together as a big team. We have a lunch, or we have dinner, so everybody can see everybody. They have a casual chat also at work. Then I will also have a one-on-one with my team members to make myself available if they have questions, they have concerns, they have issues they want to discuss. And I also expect them to spend a bit of time in the office so that they can interact with the other stakeholders. But other than that, really, you can be wherever you are as long as you do your work. And so, yeah, I think typically I'll ask them to go, okay, just before 5, just go home. And part of the reason, because working in international companies, you're expected to have an evening calls. And these evening calls with our overseas colleagues from the US or Europe could start as late as 8 or 9 o'clock, even 10 o'clock. So I think work-on-life balance to me is very important. I want to make sure that my team member has time. If they have evening calls, they can leave earlier, spend time with the family, with the children, with the wife, or with the husband, have dinner together, have a couple of hours of cooling down before they go on the evening calls. And if they really have a lot of evening calls in that night, they can basically work from home the full day on the following day. So I think it's really these small little things of empowering the staff on managing their time. And sometimes they can't manage their time. They felt they have to be in the office, and I was the one to become a bad guy to chase them out from the office, right? And I think that really helps. So at the end of the day, I think we have to avoid burnout, because recruiting someone in this profession is very tough. And I always work in the industry where we are not the top paymaster. So we can't afford the top talents. We have to compromise in terms of the candidates that we can get. But all these candidates are good. We just need to develop them. We grow them together with the team. And I find that journey is more meaningful, because if you get someone who is top talent, there may be nothing much for this person to grow. But if you get someone who is still willing to grow, and we grow the person together with the team, with the organization, we're on the same journey together, I think I find it more meaningful. And I find it that, a happy employee or happy team member is a happy team. Their success is my success, right? So I think that kind of motto is something that I share with my team, to make sure that there's no you or I, there's no I against you, but there's only we, us together within the team. I can't control other teams because they don't report to me, but at least I can influence my own team.
No, thank you, Leonard, on sharing on this, the mental state of health, how to avoid burnout. And it's very interesting to listen to your philosophy, I would say, about how you manage your team members, and how, that you make them be mentally good and stable and work on in this tough industry. Before we wrap up, I have a last question from you. And you mentioned, previously in your early stage, you have been doing a lot of remote working, and COVID-19 has speed up a lot of remote working across all industry. Do you think enterprises are ready to adopt remote working on a large scale from the security perspective?
A very relevant question. I think the question is not whether they are ready or they are not. Everyone has to do it, because especially in Singapore, there's a government directive that people have to work from home. So I really see two types of organization. One that already allows employees to get connected outside of the office. So they have a personal device like laptop, they have a personal mobile device, BYOD on their phones, and they're given a VPN connection. So they can technically work everywhere. So even if in the normal times, they are expected to work in the office, but they have that ability to work full-time at home, right? And there's small, medium enterprises or companies that either for high security settings, employees are not given a personal device. So they rely on a team client or a corporate desktop in the office. And in that sense, that it's really tough for this organization, because they have to quickly ramp up the ability for employees to work remotely. And it also depends on the jobs, right? For example, call centers or jobs that requires a lot of calls with customers. Even if you can work from home, doesn't mean that your home support that so-called environment in terms of noise control, in terms of no disruption. Some people also, we have to acknowledge that they do not like to mix work with home, especially if you have small children, or you have neighbors are doing construction or renovation. There are a lot of knocking on the walls and so on. And so I think I would say that the organization, especially the senior management, has to think carefully how to enable their employee to work effectively and comfortably. I think comfortably is very important because everybody can work from home, but at what cost, right? If it's really accelerating the burnout of your employees, that's no good, right? Employees will quit, or the productivity will go down, and they will not last long in the company. They are not realizing their full potential in their job. And this is why I think this is the attention that must be given. There are some funding that is required to enable this, and to me it is no-brainer. You just have to do it, because if not, you're losing your employees, you're losing productivity. It's even worse. And in terms of security concern, yes, of course, a lot of concern, right? For example, how secure is your home router? Because that's your gateway to the internet. If your home router is already compromised, then pretty much access to your devices at home, including your work device, could potentially be compromised as well. And physical security, for example, is your work laptop is only used by you, or you're sharing with family members. Sometimes you walk out just to get a coffee, or you find your children playing with it, right? I mean, this is some of the potential scenario that I can think of, right? Because we don't always lock our desktop, especially at home, is safe, right? But then you may have children, other family members that, can see what they are doing in your computer and so on. So definitely the increase of risk is there. But then again, as I said, we work in a very dynamic area. We identify the additional risk, we deal with it, and as long as we can keep that risk level within our appetite, within the organizational tolerance, then it should be good. I mean, nothing's impossible in cybersecurity.
Yeah, I think it's still down to a company risk appetite, how you manage the risk, how people work from home. And, thank you so much, Leonard, for all the sharing and going through this whole conversation sessions with us. And it has been a nice chit chat with you. Thank you so much once again for coming on board to this episode to share about your thoughts, your wisdom with our audience, and we do hope to get you on board next time again to chat about other cybersecurity related topics. Thank you so much.
Once again, also thank you to you for creating this platform so that other people can benefit from other leaders or that you will interview in the future as well. So thank you so much to yourself.
Thank you, and we do hope the audience enjoyed the session with together with Leonard and me, and we do see you guys next episode of Cybersec Community Chat. Thank you. Bye bye.